Your phone buzzes on the desk. Same room as an hour ago. Same clutter, same hum of traffic outside, same unread messages stacked up like dishes in a sink. But something in your chest tightens anyway, like the room itself just got louder. It didn't. Nothing out there changed at all. You probably tried to fix this by leaving, deleting the app, silencing the phone, finding a quieter room. And for an hour, maybe it works. Then, the noise finds you again, because the noise was never really out there to begin with. In a moment, I want to show you the exact image an old Stoic used to explain what a notification actually is, in the half-second before you feel anything about it. A picture involving nothing but water and a ray of light, and it will change how that buzz lands on you. And by the end, I want to show you the one room inside you that noise was never built to enter. The room a man named Marcus Aurelius learned to defend without ever leaving Rome, without ever getting the silence he wanted. Because the fix was never about the room. It starts with a man who lived above a bathhouse. Seneca once lived above a bathhouse. Below him, men grunted through exercises, hair pluckers yelped over customers, and vendors shouted their snacks into the stairwell. It should have ruined him. Instead, he wrote to a friend that the racket meant no more to him than the sound of waves on a shore. Not because he'd found a trick to block it out, because he'd stopped treating the noise itself as the enemy. He said something sharper, too, that words distract more than noises, because words demand attention, while noise only beats against the ear. The sound was never the disorder. The untrained flinch inside him, that was the disorder, and that was the only thing he'd actually fixed. So what is a notification really in the second before you feel anything about it? Epictetus had an image for this. Picture a dish of water with a ray of light resting on its surface. Disturb the water, and the light seems to shake. But the light itself never moved, only the water did. Your mind works the same way. The phone buzzing, the headline, the stranger's opinion. These are just appearances landing on the surface. They are not yet verdicts. The shaking you feel isn't the ray. It's what you poured into the water yourself, and that pouring is the one part of this whole exchange you were ever in charge of. Here's the part nobody wants to hear, because it isn't glamorous. This isn't a mystical insight you receive once and keep forever. Epictetus taught it as a drill, repeated case by case. Your son has died. What has happened? Your son has died. Nothing more. Your ship is lost. What has happened? Your ship is lost. Nothing more. Each time, you strip the bare event from the opinion glued onto it. He said if we practice this daily, from morning to night, something real would actually get done. But we don't. We get caught, he says, half asleep by every appearance, which sounds exactly like a thumb moving before the mind wakes up. Now let's be fair to the other side, because it deserves a real answer, not a dismissal. Doesn't some withdrawal help? You can't judge clearly if you're never off the grid. Even Seneca recommended retreat. True, but look closer at what he actually meant by it. He said the wise man is never more active in worldly matters than when he's stepped back from them. Retirement for him wasn't disappearing from things human and divine. It was engaging with them more honestly. And his sharpest line cuts right through the fantasy of the quiet room. When you withdraw, your job is to talk with yourself, not to have people talk about your absence. So, if silence isn't the mechanism, what is? Epictetus called it attention, and he described it the way you describe a muscle, not a setting on a device. Let your attention slip for even a short while, he warned, and don't assume you can just snap it back whenever you feel like it. A habit of not attending forms first, Then, a habit of deferring attention, of always promising yourself you'll focus later. Once the mind is let loose, he said, it's no longer in your power to recall it to propriety or moderation. That's not a metaphor about phones. It's a literal description of what a scroll session does to a will that's never been trained to hold still. Which brings up something worth sitting with honestly, not as a rule, but as a real question. Seneca noticed we agree too quickly with what people tell us. We don't test the things that frighten us, we just retreat, like soldiers abandoning camp because cattle kicked up a dust cloud that looked like an army. That's rumor. That's most of what fills a feed. His fix wasn't avoidance. It was rehearsal. The prepared mind meets danger it has already imagined. The unprepared panics over trifles. So I'll ask you directly, when the next outrage or scare crosses your screen today, will you meet it with a verdict you already thought through, or will you let it write the verdict for you? I'm genuinely curious where you land on that, so tell me. This is where the whole shape of the argument closes. Seneca wrote that no wall can be built against fortune that she cannot eventually storm. So, build the wall inward instead. If the inner part is safe, he said, a man can be attacked, but he can never be captured. That's the citadel, not a fortress that keeps the noise out, because nothing keeps the noise out. A fortress built around the one room the noise was never allowed into to begin with. The room where you decide what a thing means. You don't need to leave the feed to have that room. You need to remember it's there. So go back to that hand, reaching for the phone. The notification arrives. That's the ray of light. What happens next was never really about the phone, the app, or the room you're sitting in. It's about a second, small, quiet, easy to miss, between the impression landing and the verdict you hand it. Marcus Aurelius didn't get free by escaping Rome. He got free by learning to work inside that second, over and over, on ordinary days nobody was watching. That second is still open right now on whatever you're about to look at next. What will you do with it? I'd love to know.